As the daylight begins to soften, notice how the shadows around you start to lengthen, stretching across surfaces like gentle fingers reaching outward. Allow your attention to rest on the simple beauty of this moment, the gradual transformation of light as the sun makes its unhurried journey toward the horizon. There is something deeply reassuring about these daily transitions, these predictable rhythms that continue whether we pause to witness them or not. Take a slow, deep breath as you imagine yourself sitting quietly, perhaps by a window or in a peaceful outdoor space, watching as shadows extend themselves across the ground. With each passing minute, they grow longer, their edges softening, their presence becoming more pronounced, yet somehow gentler too. Just as these shadows stretch without effort or strain, allow your body to release any tension it has been carrying throughout your day. Notice how shadows don't fight against their nature. They simply respond to the light, changing shape and form as the sun shifts position. Perhaps there's wisdom in this surrender, this natural acceptance of change. As you continue to breathe deeply and evenly, consider how you might embrace a similar kind of gentle yielding in your own life, allowing yourself to flow with the inevitable changes rather than resisting them. The stretching shadows remind us that nothing remains fixed or permanent. The light that created sharp, defined shadows at midday now creates elongated, blurred ones as evening approaches. This constant transformation is not something to fear, but something to witness with quiet curiosity. As you observe these changes in your mind's eye, permit yourself to loosen your grip on whatever you've been holding tightly: expectations, worries, plans that feel urgent, but perhaps can wait until tomorrow. Imagine now that you are watching shadows stretch across a peaceful landscape. Perhaps it's a familiar place, a garden you love, a quiet street in your neighborhood, a park where you've spent contemplative moments, or maybe it's somewhere you've never been, but can picture clearly: a serene beach with sand that holds the day's warmth, a meadow where tall grasses sway gently in the evening breeze, a forest clearing where dappled light plays among the trees. As the sun continues its descent, notice how colors shift and transform. The harsh brightness of midday softens into rich golds, deep ambers, and finally, the cool blues of early evening. This gentle gradient of color washes over everything, painting the world in increasingly gentle hues. Just as this visual softening occurs naturally, allow your thoughts to soften as well. The sharp edges of concerns that felt so pressing earlier in the day can now be permitted to blur and recede, just like the distinct shadows of noon that gradually become more diffuse as the day wanes. Let your breathing find its own natural rhythm now. There's no need to control or direct it. Simply observe as your body finds its way toward rest, each breath creating a gentle tide that carries you further into relaxation. Just as the stretching shadows move without effort, simply responding to the changing position of the sun, your breath moves through you effortlessly, requiring nothing but your quiet attention. The lengthening of shadows reminds us of the passage of time, but not in a way that creates urgency or anxiety. Rather, it speaks to the beautiful unfolding of moments, one flowing seamlessly into the next. There is no hurry in this natural progression, no rushing toward what comes next. The sun takes exactly the time it needs to set, no more and no less. The shadows extend at precisely the pace they should, never concerned about whether they're stretching quickly enough or in the right direction. What would it feel like to move through your own life with this same unhurried acceptance? To trust that you are exactly where you need to be, unfolding at exactly the right pace. As you continue to relax more deeply, imagine releasing any expectations about how quickly you should fall asleep, how productive tomorrow needs to be, or how effectively you managed the day that's now drawing to a close. Like the stretching shadows, you can simply be, responding naturally to the circumstances around you without judgment or striving. Notice how shadows don't just extend, they also merge. Individual shadows from separate objects gradually reach toward one another until they blend together, creating new forms, unified and connected. Perhaps this offers another gentle lesson, a reminder of how we are all connected, how the boundaries we perceive between ourselves and others, between one day and the next, between one phase of life and another, are often more fluid than we imagine. As evening deepens, shadows eventually dissolve into the gathering darkness. But this dissolution isn't an ending, it's a transformation. The distinct shadows become part of a larger whole, a soft blanket of evening that wraps around everything with equal tenderness. Nothing is lost in this transformation. Rather, everything is embraced by the same gentle darkness, held in the same quiet space of rest and renewal. Your thoughts, too, can be allowed to dissolve in this way, not forced away or suppressed, but simply permitted to merge with the growing quietness within you. Each concern, each lingering thought from your day can stretch out like those shadows until it becomes less distinct, less demanding of your attention, eventually blending with a sense of overall peacefulness that makes individual worries harder to distinguish and grasp. Imagine now that you are watching the very last moments of direct sunlight. The sun itself is just touching the horizon, its warm glow painting everything in rich, honeyed tones. The shadows have stretched to their fullest extent, creating long pathways of coolness that balance the remaining warmth of the day. There is an exquisite equilibrium in this moment, not too much light, not too much darkness, but a perfect harmony between the two. Your body can find a similar balance as you continue to settle toward sleep, neither trying to remain alert nor forcing yourself toward unconsciousness, but resting in the peaceful in-between, where wakefulness gradually and naturally gives way to slumber. Trust that this transition, like the transition from day to evening, knows its own timing and requires no effort on your part. As the lower edge of the sun disappears below the horizon, notice how the quality of light changes once again. What was golden becomes lavender. What was warm becomes cool and gentle. The stretched shadows, having reached their maximum length, now begin to lose their definition as the source of light that created them fades from view. Yet there remains a lingering glow, a gentle illumination that persists even as direct sunlight vanishes. This afterglow reminds us that endings and beginnings are not as separate as they might seem. The day is ending, yes, but this ending contains within it the seed of tomorrow's beginning. Nothing truly concludes without offering something new in its place. As you release this day and prepare for sleep, know that you're not simply ending one experience, but preparing the way for renewal, for the fresh perspective that rest will bring. The stretching shadows have been teaching us about impermanence all along, how everything transforms, how nothing remains exactly as it was. And yet, within this constant change, there is deep continuity. The sun that sets today is the same sun that will rise tomorrow, though we and the world around us may be subtly different when it does. Similarly, you who drift toward sleep tonight are the same person who will awaken tomorrow, though perhaps with renewed energy, fresh insights, or shifted perspectives. Allow your awareness to expand now beyond the visual imagery of stretching shadows to include all your senses. Perhaps there are evening sounds surrounding you, the gentle diminuendo of birdsong as feathered creatures settle for the night, the subtle shift in ambient noise as human activity winds down, the emergence of nocturnal sounds that were masked by daytime busyness. These acoustic transitions mirror the visual ones, creating a multi-layered symphony of day turning to night. Notice, too, the feeling of your body becoming heavier, more settled against whatever is supporting you, just as shadows seem to melt into surfaces as evening progresses. Your body can melt more deeply into your bed or chair, releasing any remaining tension with each breath. There is no effort required in this surrendering, simply a recognition that you are held, supported, safe to let go completely. The temperature often shifts as day transitions to evening, the air becoming cooler as direct sunlight fades. Your body likely registers these subtle changes, perhaps welcoming the coolness after a warm day, or appreciating the contrast between cool air and warm blankets. These temperature fluctuations are another reminder of the constant gentle changes that surround us, changes we need not resist, but can instead appreciate as part of the rich tapestry of sensory experience. As full evening begins to settle in, the stretched shadows have completed their journey, merging with the overall dimness until individual shadows can no longer be distinguished. This doesn't mean the objects that cast them have vanished, only that the conditions have changed. The light source has shifted. Similarly, the concerns or challenges that felt so prominent during your day haven't necessarily vanished. But as you move toward sleep, they can recede from prominence, becoming less defined and demanding as your consciousness shifts toward rest. Imagine now that you're viewing this transition from a great height, perhaps from a hillside overlooking a valley, or from the window of a tall building with a panoramic view. From this elevated perspective, you can watch as shadows stretch and merge across the entire landscape. Individual details become less important than the overall pattern. The beautiful choreography of light and shadow playing across the Earth's surface. This broader view offers a reminder that our individual experiences, while deeply significant to us, are also part of something much larger. The challenges that feel overwhelming when viewed up close often appear as small parts of a greater pattern when we step back for a wider perspective. As you continue to relax more deeply, allow your awareness to expand beyond the boundaries of personal concerns to touch this larger context. This sense of belonging to something more extensive than your individual journey. Notice how this broader perspective naturally brings a sense of ease, of proportion. The things that seemed so crucial, so urgent earlier in the day, can be seen now as single moments in a vast and continuing unfoldment, like one shadow among many stretching across a wide landscape. Each concern has its place, but need not dominate your entire field of awareness. As nightfall approaches, the last traces of direct sunlight have vanished, replaced by the more diffuse illumination of twilight. This indirect light creates much softer boundaries between objects and their surroundings, as if the world itself is relaxing its definitions, becoming more fluid and interconnected. Your consciousness can mirror this softening, allowing the distinct thoughts and feelings that occupied your day to become less rigidly defined, more flowing and permeable. The transition from day to night happens so gradually that it's impossible to pinpoint the exact moment when one becomes the other. There is no clear dividing line, only a series of subtle shifts that eventually transform our experience completely. Sleep approaches in much the same way, not as a sudden switch from wakefulness to unconsciousness, but as a gradual transformation through increasingly deeper states of relaxation, until, without realizing exactly when it happened, you've crossed into slumber. Trust this natural process. Just as you don't need to make the sun set or the shadows stretch, you don't need to make yourself fall asleep. Your body knows this ancient rhythm, has been practicing it your entire life. Your role is simply to create favorable conditions, to notice what is already happening naturally, and to allow it to unfold without interference. Imagine that each breath you take carries you a little further along this gentle transition. Each exhalation releases a little more tension, surrenders a little more of the day's accumulations. Each inhalation brings a little more peace, a little more acceptance of this present moment exactly as it is. There's nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to do or accomplish. This time is set aside solely for rest, for renewal, for the deep restoration that sleep will bring. As your body continues to relax, you might notice subtle internal sensations, perhaps a pleasant heaviness in your limbs, a sense of gentle pulsation as blood circulates, or the subtle movement of breath in your chest and abdomen. These physical experiences anchor you in the present moment, offering a focal point for your attention that draws it away from the mental activity that might otherwise keep you alert. Just as the stretching shadows transform the visual landscape, these internal sensations transform your bodily landscape, creating the conditions for sleep to arise naturally. There's a beautiful wisdom in this process, a deep intelligence that knows exactly what is needed for complete rest and recovery. You need only listen and follow where this wisdom leads. The imagery of shadows stretching as the sun sets reminds us that even in apparent endings, there is movement, there is life, there is continuation. The day doesn't simply stop, it transforms. Light doesn't simply vanish, it changes quality. Similarly, consciousness doesn't simply shut off as sleep approaches. It shifts into different forms, different rhythms, different ways of processing and experiencing. As you hover in this liminal space between wakefulness and sleep, consider that you are participating in one of the most ancient transitions known to living beings. Since the very beginning of life on this planet, organisms have synchronized with the rhythms of day and night, activity and rest. When you surrender to sleep, you join this vast communion of beings, responding to the fundamental pulses of existence. The stretched shadows we've been contemplating throughout this meditation reveal something profound about the nature of reality itself, how seemingly solid things are actually defined by both presence and absence, by substance and the lack of it. A shadow is not a thing itself, but the absence of direct light created by the presence of an object. This interplay between what is and what isn't, between form and space, substance and emptiness, reminds us of the complementary nature of all experience. Sleep and wakefulness share this complementary relationship. Neither state could exist without the other. Each gives meaning and value to its counterpart. The productivity, engagement, and outward focus of your day find their necessary balance in the receptivity, inwardness, and surrender of your night. By honoring both states equally, you align yourself with the natural rhythms that support optimal well-being. As full darkness begins to settle in, replacing the stretched shadows with a more uniform dimness, you might imagine this darkness not as an absence, but as a presence, a gentle, velvety substance that fills the space around you, wrapping you in its protective embrace. This darkness doesn't erase the world. It simply transforms how we perceive and interact with it. Similarly, sleep doesn't erase your consciousness, but transforms it, offering different types of awareness, different ways of processing experience. The transition from stretched shadows to complete darkness happens without resistance or struggle. The shadows don't cling to their form or fight against their dissolution. into the greater darkness. They simply follow the natural progression as light changes. Your mind can follow a similar path towards sleep, not forcing, not clinging to wakefulness, but simply allowing the natural processes to unfold at their own pace. As your body continues to relax more deeply, you might notice that your thoughts start to lose their linear quality. Just as stretched shadows become less distinct as twilight deepens, your thinking may become more diffuse, more associative, less bound by logical structures. This loosening of mental patterns is a sign that you're moving closer to the threshold of sleep, where the organizing principles of waking consciousness begin to yield to the different logic of dreams. Welcome these shifts. There's nothing to fix or correct about the natural transitions your mind makes as it prepares for sleep. The unusual connections, the dreamlike images that might float across your awareness, the sense of your thoughts stretching and transforming like those shadows at sunset, all are signposts along the path to restorative rest. Imagine now that you can feel the gentle weight of darkness settling over the landscape, over your body, over your thoughts. This is not a heavy or oppressive weight, but a comforting one, like a perfectly weighted blanket that provides just enough pressure to create a sense of security and containment. This gentle pressure helps you surrender more completely to the process of letting go, of transitioning from the active engagement of day to the receptive restoration of night. Notice how this imagery affects your breathing. Perhaps your inhales and exhales are becoming slower, deeper, more rhythmic. Perhaps the pauses between breaths are lengthening slightly. There's no need to control this process. Simply observe as your respiratory rhythm adjusts itself to support deeper relaxation, preparing your body for the efficient restoration that sleep provides. The stretched shadows we've been contemplating throughout this meditation can serve as metaphors for so many aspects of human experience. How influences extend beyond their obvious boundaries. How connections form and reform as conditions change. How distinctions blur and transform with shifting perspective as sleep approaches. Allow these metaphorical understandings to soften into direct experience. Your analytical mind yielding to the more intuitive knowing that accompanies deep relaxation. The world outside continues its own rhythms as you move toward sleep. Perhaps there are distant sounds, a car passing occasionally, the whisper of wind in trees, the subtle creaks and settlings of your home. These sounds need not disturb you. Rather, they can serve as reminders of the ongoing life from which you temporarily withdraw during sleep. The continuity that will support your return to wakefulness when the time is right, just as the stretched shadows eventually yield to night, only to reappear with the dawn in new configurations. Your conscious awareness now prepares to yield to sleep, knowing it will return refreshed and renewed with tomorrow's awakening. This cycle of engagement and withdrawal, activity and rest, stretching outward and gathering inward, forms the basic rhythm not just of days and nights, but of a well-lived life, a dance of expansion and contraction, effort and surrender. As you hover at the threshold of sleep, imagine one final image, the very last sliver of sun disappearing below the horizon, the stretched shadows finally merging completely with the gentle darkness of night. All sharp distinctions softening into a unified field of restful dimness. In this unified field, there is no separation, no division, only the peaceful wholeness of completed transition. Your consciousness can mirror this unification. All separate concerns and distinct thoughts gradually merging into a single field of peaceful awareness, not forcing this merging, not striving for it, but simply noticing as it happens naturally. The inevitable result of allowing yourself to follow the ancient rhythm of day yielding to night, wakefulness yielding to sleep. And now, as you drift closer to sleep with each breath, know that you're held in the same grand pattern that guides the stretching shadows and setting sun, a pattern of natural transition, of perfect timing, of necessary renewal. There is profound wisdom in your body's pull toward sleep, in your mind's gradual surrender to unconsciousness. This wisdom has sustained life for millions of years and will continue to guide you through each cycle of waking and sleeping, doing and being, engaging and releasing. Rest now in complete trust, knowing that while you sleep, the world will continue its turning, preparing to greet you with new light when you awaken. The shadows will have completed their cycle from short to stretched to dissolved in darkness to reborn with dawn, just as your consciousness completes its own cycle through the landscape of sleep and dreams before returning to the active engagement of a new day. Allow yourself to release completely into this perfect rhythm, this cosmic lullaby of light transforming to darkness and back again. Just as the shadows stretch without effort, let yourself extend into sleep without striving, without monitoring your progress, without concern for how quickly or slowly the transition happens. Trust the process completely, surrendering to the deep wisdom of your body and the ancient patterns of nature. The stretched shadows have completed their journey now, dissolving into the gentle darkness that cradles all in its peaceful embrace. Your journey toward sleep continues at its own perfect pace, each breath carrying you closer to complete rest, each moment an opportunity to surrender a little more fully to the restoration that awaits you in slumber. Rest now, release completely. Allow sleep to find you, just as darkness finds the stretched shadows at the close of day, transforming them not through elimination, but through loving embrace into something new, something whole, something perfect in its temporary formlessness, waiting to be reborn with the dawn.